Hello my scholars, welcome to my school YouTube channel. My name is Emmanuel, and in today's video we'll continue solving the JAMB CBT past questions for biology in the year 2006. Please don't go anywhere, stick around, then we'll be right back. You're welcome back to my school YouTube channel. In today's video, like I said earlier, I'll be tackling question 26 to 50. Now let's get down to question number 26. Grasses recover quickly from bushfires in the savannah because of their what? Option A says perinating organs. What is perinating? Perinating organs are organs or structures that helps in perination, okay? And perination actually is a situation, is a process where plants actually are able to survive, okay, adverse effects or conditions that help them during the from one growing season, okay, to another growing season. During that time, they are able to escape, they are able to adapt during that those adverse effects that come. So the situation or this process is what we call what we refer to as perination, okay? So the organ or the structures that enable them to survive those adverse conditions, okay, from one growing season to another growing season is what we call perinating organs. Of course, that is what is responsible. Option B says rapid growth rate. No, that is not the reason why they recover quickly from that. Something is actually responsible. It's because of the organs they have, okay? And those organs are what we call perinating organs. We have fibrous roots. Of course, the fibrous roots alone will not do, okay? Because it has to go down, but that could actually has to do with, don't forget, we talk about grasses that are gone through or underwent bush burning, okay, bushfire in the savannah. So as those organs begin to sense water again, okay, as water begins to rain, they have the ability to be able to do what? To form resistance, or they are able to adapt, okay, in that particular region. And then we have succulent stems. So among these options now, the correct answer is perinating organs. Option A is the correct answer. Now let's move on to question number 27. Climax communities in a biotic succession are usually characterized by what? Now when we talk about climax communities, we are talking about when something has reached climax, it has reached its peak, okay, of stability. And usually we refer to biotic succession, or in other words we call it ecological succession, okay? Ecological succession is a situation where there is stability, okay, of plants in a plant and animal in a particular environment. And usually we talk about two types, major types, okay? Of course, some persons will say, or some textbooks will say three, but majorly we have two. We have the primary succession, and then we have the secondary succession. The primary succession takes place in an environment, a community where no life has existed before. It's possible maybe because there was drought in that environment, or maybe there was erosion in that place, okay? All the organisms that they have eloped and they have moved away from that place, so that place becomes dead, like a dead place. So we have new organisms, maybe let's say new plants that are growing as producers in the environment newly. Then we have gradually we have the herbivore or some other animals begin to creep into that environment, and then life begins again. So where there has not been a bare ground, okay, is where we talk about primary succession, and then a place where the primary succession begins to develop, okay, that's where we have the secondary. So it gets to a point where the secondary succession, okay, that environment or the community becomes stabilized, okay, the plants are there, like the food chain can go from the producer to the consumer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, and so on, and then life continues there. All the resources they need to survive in that communities, they have them there. So the environment becomes stable, the plants become stabilized, the animals become stabilized. So we say we have a climax, a climax community. And what is actually responsible? We say climax communities in the biotic are usually characterized by option A says a constant change in the appearance of the communities. If we still have constant change, it means that we have not gotten to the climax yet. There's no stability because changes are still occurring. So option B says different species that are constantly changing. If the changes, like we talked about ecological succession, okay, if we have the species that are still changing, it means that they have not stabilized yet. So we have not gotten to the climax communities. So option B is not the answer. Option C says a stable composition of plants and animal species. Yes, they will be stable, because at that point in time, the plants, the trees, they are stable, the animals are stable. There we talk about what stability. In other words, climax community is linked to what? Stability in that community. So option C is correct. Option D says rapid changes in. Once there is changes, okay, we cannot talk about what? Climax. So the climax communities in a biotic succession are usually characterized by a stable composition of plant and animal species. So the correct answer is option C. Question number 28. The soil type that contain nutrients which are not readily available for plants is what? The soil type that contains nutrients, okay, but the nutrients that are present in that soil are not available by plants. Plants cannot utilize them, okay. What type of soil is that? Option A says alluvia. Well, alluvia is not a type of soil. Of course, you know, we have loamy soil, we have clay soil, we have sandy soil. Okay, we can have humus soil, okay, but we don't have alluvia. So alluvial soil is not a type of soil, though it's a type of phenomenon that occur, that happen to a type of soil, okay, but not. So we can eliminate option A. So we have clay soil, sandy soil, loamy soil. Clay soil, normally we know that they have smaller particles, okay, because of how fine and smaller the particles are. Usually, once they have water, you know, come in contact with water, they become sticky, okay. So in like manner, if nutrients are present in it, okay, now instead of the nutrients to get porous, because their porosity is very, very, very low, they don't get, because they get stick easily. So the nutrients that are present in the clay soil will not percolate, will not go down, okay, for plants that has roots to do what? To tap them. So it becomes very difficult. So even though the nutrient is there present in that soil, the plants cannot utilize them, because the nutrients are actually, you know, clumped together. They are not released. The soil erosion, of course, if you have soil erosion, is hard to have that kind of, you know, situation here, because the nutrients are not easily released, are not available for plants to use, because they are just clumped together. They don't go down to the part of the soil where the plant will actually need them. So this is having nutrients present, but they are not readily available. Let's go option C, say sandy soil. Yeah, we know sandy soil. We know we have the particles are bigger, okay, in size than the clay soil, okay. In fact, their level of porosity, okay, is very high. If water falls, if you pour water on sandy soil, what happens? It goes down. So the same way, like manners, we have nutrients there. The nutrients that are there will just go down. Maybe with water, they will go down to the bottom, okay, the bed of the water, of the soil. And what happens? Plants can go there, the roots can go there to tap those nutrients. So the nutrients are present, and then they are also available for what? For this. And then we have the loamy soil also. That is also. So option, after option A, B, C, D, the question says the soil type that contain nutrients which are not readily available for plants are actually the clay soil. So the correct answer is option B. Now let's move on to question number 29. A population that doubles in size at constant intervals is an indication of what? Option A says sigmoid growth. Option B says exponential growth. Option C says population explosion. And option D says rapid growth. Well, all of them are different types of growth that we could have. Okay, when we talk about, let's take from option D. Option D says rapid growth. Well, we can have rapid growth when the population, you know, goes beyond expectation, okay. We can say we have a rapid growth. Usually, maybe we have a total number of organisms living in an environment, and then the organism actually begin to grow. The population grows, okay. Maybe it's supposed to have an interval, okay, like let's say every 2%. Let's say we have an interval, a regular interval, okay, of growth, okay. We say that would have been, but if it is more than it is expected, okay, we say we have a rapid growth beyond expectation. Option C says, don't forget, we are talking about what? The population that what? Doubles in size. Option C says population explosion. We can have population explosion if beyond our expectation. Of course, we have a population of a group of organisms in an environment or in a community, okay. It just, if the population, you know, outshines or goes beyond the available resources that we have there. We can like say overpopulation, okay, in some cases, the available space, the available resources that are present in that particular community is not up to what the population. So we have population, maybe the birth rate increased or the immigration rate increased, okay, then beyond what we have that is available resources in that point. So we say we have a population with explosion. Option B says exponential growth. We have exponential growth if we have, of course it's exponential, if we have the population of the organism in that community doubles, okay, just like more than what the actual population that it used to be. Of course, we say it has reached a climax, a climax, and exponential, growth has taken place. Once the number of organisms that are in that community doubles the size, okay, of that particular environment, we say we have an exponential growth. And if it is sigmoid growth has to do with, we have a gradual increase of the population as it grows up a little bit gradually, and then it keeps moving until it gets to a peak, a point where we have, climax. We can say we have, an exponential growth there. Then what happens? It begins to drop again, depending on the conditions that are required in that particular environment. It begins to drop. It drops to a point where it becomes stable. So a population that doubles in size at constant intervals, when we say constant interval, we say a consistent time frame, okay, it doubles, is an indication of exponential growth. So the correct answer is option B. Question number 30. Azan and Usei are identical twins, but Azan grows taller and fatter from Usei. This is probably because what? Even though both of them are identical twins, we could have cases where one is taller while the other one is shorter, and then one is fatter while the other one is not as fat as the other one. Okay, what is responsible for that? Option A says Azan inherits genes for tallness and fatness from the father. That is not totally true, because the genes actually for both of them are the same thing, because they are identical twins. So the DNA, so even though their DNA are the same thing as identical twins, okay, we could have some subtle differences, okay, in what we call prenatal development. When we say prenatal, we are talking about the kind of placenta, in the placenta development, yes, usually, and then we have the oxygen and nutrients that is distributed at that point. It's a prenatal environment, kind of, okay. So that actually might be responsible for that. So the environment in which both of them actually go in that prenatal situation case, okay, could be responsible for that. So option B says they have the similar genotypes. No, that is not true. Option C says Hussein is endowed, don't forget both of them are identical twins, okay. Hussein is endowed with genes for shortness and thinness. No, they have the same DNA, okay. So they can have the option D says they are raised in different environments. Yes, because like I said, we have a prenatal environment, okay, that actually makes that, because we talk about the time where the placenta is being developed, and then we talk about the nutrients, okay, and oxygen that is being supplied at that particular point in time. So option D says they are raised in different environments. What is responsible for that? For the tallness and the fatness of Azan, okay, than Hussein is actually because they are raised in different environments. So the correct answer is option D. Now let's move on to question number 31. Okay, of course, I'm sure you should be able to identify this diagram. Okay, we have the fetus here. Okay, this is a pregnant. Okay, we have a pregnant woman here. Of course, this is the womb. You can have it there. So then we have this part, that's the tube, called the fallopian tube, that is connected to the ovary. Okay, we have them two at this point, okay. Then we have this part, II here, we have it as the placenta. Actually, the question says the organ through which the embryo receives food, water, and oxygen is labeled what? If you look at it very well, this is where the embryo is, okay, still developing. Then we have something like a cord here. That is what we call the umbilical cord. Umbilical cord here. Then immediately you come outside here, we have the placenta at this point. So the placenta is the organ through which the embryo will receive food, will receive water, will receive nutrients and oxygen from the mother. Okay, usually it is what? The placenta. And if you look at that point very well, that's this point, you look at it, that is II. So that is the part where it is. So option A says II. So II is where the placenta is. So the correct answer is option C. Now let's move on to question number 32. Mammals are capable of producing hypertonic urine mainly because of reabsorption in the what? This is a direct question. Okay, if you've been following the past questions we've been treating, this is what happens in the kidney, in the urine formation. When we talk about hypertonic urine, hypertonic has to do with a kind of urine where the solute is actually more concentrated, okay, than water. Usually that happens in mammals whenever there is dehydration. Okay, you want to conserve water. Okay, so we talk about osmoregulation, we talk about homeostasis, okay, regulation of internal environment. The kidney does that. Okay, so usually when we have the solute, the urine now, that is what? That is more concentrated than the water, we have a hypertonic what? Urine. So say mammals are capable of producing hypertonic urine mainly because of reabsorption in the what? Usually the journey starts with what we call the glomerulus, okay, in the nephron of the kidney. In the glomerulus together with the Bowman's capsule are what are responsible for what we call ultrafiltration. We call it filtration, okay? That's the first step that takes place in the kidney nephrons, okay? The Bowman's capsule. So the Bowman's capsule is actually not responsible for reabsorption, but it is responsible for filtration of the urine, okay, in the blood so that it can go to the next. Then we talk about option B, says so, which means option A is eliminated. Option B says urethra. Well, usually urethra, we have urethra. Okay, let me differentiate the two. From the Bowman's capsule, we have it in the kidney. We have a tube, okay, that the urine that has been filtered now passes through, okay, that it is bringing it where? To the bladder, okay. Now that tube that transports, okay, that allows the movement of urine that has been formed, okay, that has been filtered, okay, from the blood straight down, that tube is what we call the ureter, okay. Ureter is the tube that brings the urine that has been formed, okay, that has been filtered from the blood, that brings it to the bladder. And then immediately after the bladder, that's where the urine is. Okay, now the urine needs to be passed out. Now it will now pass from the bladder through the urethra. So the urethra is directly below the bladder, okay, where the urine is actually what passed out of the body. That's the urethra. And option D says loop of Henle, or some people call it Henle's loop, okay. So Henle's loop or loop of Henle is actually the part of the mammals. It is present, the organ that's present in the mammals that actually is responsible for reabsorption. So reabsorption or absorption actually takes place in the loop of Henle, not the Bowman's capsule, not urethra, no urethra. It is loop of Henle. So the correct answer is option D. Question number 33. We have a diagram here again. We have Roman figure 1, 2, 3, 4. So first, let's try to identify each of this. Of course, you can see this is cilia, and then you have a basal, like a foot, okay, foot kind of thing. Of course, the organism that shows this is the paramecium. So we have two of them fused together, okay, and then there is what? Exchange of genetic what? Material from this point to this point, is moving into each other like that, okay. So we have two of them fused together. Option, there's this II. This is a diagram of like a ginger, okay, like a stem of ginger. Okay, you can see it going up from this part that way, okay. This is the stem, okay, modified stem in the soil, okay, going up. Then option, the III is like the amoeba, okay, like it's going to lyse, it's going to break up from here. It has already split. We have, you know, you have this and this at this point, okay. Then what happens? It splits at this point, okay. And then we have the IV. This is a fleshy leaf, okay. Fleshy leaf, that should be for what we call bryophyllum, okay. Bryophyllum. At this point we have it like the buds that are going up. This is a fleshy leaf, okay. Now let's go down to question. The question says, using the diagram, sexual reproduction is illustrated in where, okay. Like, of course, you know, sexual reproduction actually involves two organisms, both the male and the female, where there's what? Exchange. There's movement of genetic what? Materials. It could be the sperm cells moving to the egg cell to fertilize. We could have genetic materials being exchanged to lead to what? and then we have it at this point. Don't forget we said this is actually paramecium. Generally, paramecium actually undergoes what we call asexual reproduction. That is primarily what they undergo. But we have in cases where the nutrients are limited, they have limited nutrients that are present, okay, under that condition. What they just do is they do what? They undergo sexual reproduction through the process we call conjugation. So we have two paramecia, okay, if it is one paramecium, if it is more than one paramecia coming together, like in this case, okay, they fuse together. When they fuse together, what happens? They begin to exchange their what? Their genetic what? Genetic materials, and at the point, after the point, they separate again, and then they form new offspring, okay, new young one at this point. So here we have a kind of, this is what we call, this is a sexual reproduction, because we have two of them exchanging, fusing together. Here we have just the ginger just going up there. So this is what we call vegetative propagation. Then here we have yes, this one is lysine at this point. So this is not, it's just only a single parent here, okay, that is splitting into two, okay. In this case we have two, so this is not also sexual, this is asexual, and then we have this is also asexual. So using the diagram, sexual reproduction is illustrated in this point where we have I. So Roman figure I is in B, so the correct answer is option B. Now let's move on to question number 34. The same diagram we just saw in the last question. Using the diagram, a plant that exhibits the type of reproduction shown in IV is what? Already I've explained, and we have tried to identify each of these species, okay? Okay, option A says cola, option B says ginger, option D says bryophyllum, option D says sugarcane. Well, we know that cola, yes, and sugarcane, both of them actually undergo vegetative propagation. But when we say vegetative, we have the artificial and then we have the natural, okay? So cola and sugarcane undergo the artificial vegetative propagation. When we say artificial, because somebody has to what? Cut them. Of course, we refer to them as cutting. So their vegetative part is actually cut, okay? You cut them just like the way you do to your cassava stem, okay? So you cut the part. When you cut the part, then you what? You plant that stem into the soil, and what happens is it begins to grow up into an adult plant, okay? So that we call artificial vegetative what? Propagation, okay? And the cola and the what? Sugarcane actually belongs to that particular. Don't forget, we are talking about what? The reproduction that is found here. So this is not responsible for it. So option A and option D, we say these are what? Artificial vegetative propagation. Then for this also artificial vegetative propagation. So we are left with option B and option C. Option B and option C, ginger and bryophyllum, both of them actually undergo what we call the natural vegetative propagation. Natural vegetative propagation. They are natural, they are not artificial by their own self. They just go out. But the difference between them is this. Ginger usually will undergo a kind of reproduction, natural vegetative production, where a modified stem, okay, begins to grow. Modified stem, like we have it in this case now. This is the stem. There is a modified stem now, begins to grow up from this to form the adult plant. But in the case of the bryophyllum makes use of the fleshy leaves. It has leaves, okay, that are fleshy. So what you just discovered is that what they begin to grow. Let's see a clearer picture, okay, diagram of this, so that we can understand this more. So this is a clearer diagram of how the bryophyllum look like. You can see the leaf. Now this is the fleshy leaves, okay. Then you have it, the buds, okay, growing up on the leaf. Can you see that? Okay, you can see that that's the buds. There we have it. So this is the bryophyllum. So this undergoes what we call a natural vegetative propagation, unlike the ginger. The ginger also undergoes it, but the ginger uses the modified stem, okay, the modified stem, the roots. That's where it begins to grow from in the soil. So let's move back to our options and choose the correct answer. So be that as it may, you can now see that this is what the bryophyllum that actually undergoes, that I showed us the picture and the diagram now. So among this now, the correct answer is bryophyllum. Option C is the correct answer. Do you know you can actually take a practice questions on a simulated JAMB CBT past questions? All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There, you'll be able to download the Myschool mobile app for your Androids, and the Myschool software for your laptops and computers. Please go ahead and start practicing. Now let's move on to question number 35. We have a diagram here again. Of course, we are familiar with this. We saw it in the previous question. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think let's look at a more clearer diagram, okay, than this, so that we can explain further. So we have this part here, okay. This is the placenta here. This is the placenta here. You can see it here. Then this is the what? The umbilical cord. Okay, the placenta links to the umbilical cord to the baby. Okay, you can have it. That's why when you say baby is born, you see the navel. Okay, that's tube that is connected. That's the umbilical cord. Okay, so nutrients are passed in from the placenta here. The nutrients, the food, to the umbilical cord, and eventually to this point. So then we have, this is the what? This is the umbilical cord. So this part is the fetus, okay, that's the embryo, the baby itself that is coming up, and then this is the amnion, this is the amniotic fluid, okay, this fluid itself, this fluid here, that's the amniotic fluid, okay, and the amniotic fluid, usually what it does is to protect the kid, or the, sorry, it's not a kid yet, okay, the embryo, to protect it from injury, okay, and also to maintain a stable temperature in that particular point in time. It will not be too hot, it will not be too cold for this embryo. That's what the amniotic, from that question we're asked to identify what the function of this particular part is. This is the amniotic fluid. Let's move back to the question we have. So the question says we should use the diagram. In the diagram, the part labeled IV, Roman figure 4, is for what? Okay, this is Roman figure 4 here, IV. I just showed us there. This is the embryo. We have there the fetus that's going up, and then we have this is this part now, okay, we call it the amniotic what? Fluid, and what it does is to protect the embryo from what? From injury, as well as maintaining a stable what? Temperature for the embryo, the fetus that we have. This option A says excretion, no. Option B says nourishment, no. Option C says protection, yes. Option D says respiration, protection. The correct answer is option C. I believe you are enjoying this content. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video. Let's move on to question number 36. We have a diagram here. Of course, as a biology student, I'm sure this diagram, you should be familiar with it by now. Of course, we have twisted, like a twisted ladder. Okay, we have like a ladder that is twisted. Okay, these are double helical. Of course, this is the diagram. This structure actually represents the DNA. The DNA usually is a double helix. When we say double, we have two of it here. Okay, we have it here. Double helix, okay, double helical shaped twisted ladder, like a twisted ladder, okay, that contained was strands. Okay, these are strands of the phosphate group, and then the sugar, phosphate. Usually we have in every DNA, of course, we know this is what is responsible for coding, okay, of material. Just like someone said that DNA is likened to be a book manual, okay, that contains all the information on how to actually operate a particular equipment, okay, liking DNA to be. So all the genetic, information that are needed, okay, in the body of an organism, they are all encoded in the DNA. We have them just like the book manual, okay, we have them in the DNA, and of course we know they are proteinous. Now DNA, of course, it stands for DNA deoxyribonucleic acid. So because it has deoxyribonucleic acid, now the DNA usually have what we call the nitrogenous. Let's move on to the board so we can analyze that. We have the nitrogenous base, okay, understand. Then we have, of course, they are linked up together in the with hydrogen bonds. We have nitrogenous base, we have the sugar, okay, and the we have the propagation group. Now usually the sugar in the DNA is what we call deoxyribose sugar, okay, from DNA. Okay, that's the difference between it and RNA. RNA has what we call ribose sugar, because this is ribonucleic acid. Both of them are types of nucleic acid. So R is what? Ribonucleic acid. So the kind of sugar that we have here is the ribose sugar. But the sugar we have in DNA is actually deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, deoxyribose sugar. Okay, time will fail us to begin to draw the structure of this. But when we say deoxy means that what? Oxygen. D means what? Removal. Dehydration, water is removed, okay? Dechlorination, chlorine is removed. So when we see D in chemistry or in science or in biology, we say what? DE means what? Removal. So removal of what? Oxygen. So oxygen has been removed from the structure of that disease. So we have the deoxyribose sugar. That is kind of sugar we have. Then when we talk about the nitrogenous bases, we have about 4 of them for the bases, okay? Of course, the bases, we have 4 of them. We have the A, T, G, and then we have the C, okay? For the DNA, I'm trying to tell us the difference between the DNA and the RNA, okay? The A is adenine, then the T is thymine. This looks like adenosine, but this is adenine, okay? Adenosine triphosphate is the energy in the water production, in the respiration, okay? Then the G is the guanine, and then the C is the cytosine. So these are the 4 different nitrogenous bases that are present in the DNA as the word nitrogenous base. Then we have also 4 of them in the RNA. The A is still present, adenine is present. Then in place of the thymine, we have thymine, then we have guanine. In place of the C, cytosine, we have the uracil coming in here to what? To replace it. So the uracil is different at this point for the RNA. So in other words, we are saying nitrogenous bases, you can see them, 2 of them are linked up together, okay? They are linked together by what we call the hydrogen bond, okay? Link them together to form them on the ladder. Let's move on to the screen and see what we have. So the diagram represents the structure of what? We have already analyzed this, okay? We have proteins, we have chromosomes, we have RNA, we have DNA. The correct answer here is option D, DNA. Now, question number 37. Okay, the same diagram we have there. Okay, the question says in the diagram, the part labeled I represents the what? Represent I, part labeled I. Don't forget, we said the DNA looks like a twisted ladder. Okay, so we have this part here. Okay, and then this part. Okay, these ones are brought out together. I just showed us on the board in the previous question that these are what we actually refer to as the bases, nitrogenous bases. Okay, for the DNA, we say we have the adenine, we have the thymine, we have the guanine, and then we have the cytosine. Those are the 4 nitrogenous bases, and both of them are actually, I think let's look at a clearer diagram so that we can appreciate it more. So we can see now, yes, they are colored. So these are the what? Nitrogenous base pairs. Okay, nitrogenous base pairs. So you can see here we have brown, we have green, to show that we have 2 of them that are usually together. Usually the adenine and the thymine are usually together. Adenine and thymine will always be together, while the guanine and cytosine will always what? Be blended together. So you can see here, this brown one, we have this. So these are the nitrogenous bases. I've explained that already from what we did before on the previous question. And then we have this bond. What binds them together is actually the hydrogen bonds that binds them together. So the helical, usually we have, you know, this first part of it. This first part, we say it is 5 prime, and this one is what? 3 prime. So by the time, because they are twisted, so at the end of the day, you are going to have your 3 prime will be here, 5 prime will be here, because it's actually what? Twisted, just to show that it was twisted. You don't have 5 here, we don't have 3 here like we had it here, so it is twisted. So we have the base pair. So let's move on back to the options we have so we can select our answer. So in the diagram, the part labeled I, which is this, actually represents what? The base pairs. We just saw that now. So the correct answer is option A. Question 38. We have okay, actually, if you can identify this, you can identify this one with their long neck. Okay, these are giraffe. New generational giraffe, like we can have the Gen Zs, okay? In that time, we have the ancestors here, the older ones that were before this. So now this is a new generation. We have their necks longer, okay, of giraffe more than this. So there is an adaptation actually that's responsible for that option. The question says in the diagram, the change in the length of the neck of the giraffes shown was brought about by what? Geographical isolation. Well, if it is geographical isolation, we would have said because of some barriers, okay, that were there, the population begin to grow where we have distinct organisms, okay, because of what? Barriers they try to overcome. So it is not a geographical isolation, because it doesn't have anything to do with their particular location where they have. Option B says predation. When we talk about predation, predation is a situation or it's a process where an organism, maybe like a predator, okay, a higher organism tries to what? To kill and to feed on the other organism, okay, where the other one survives. So this is not applicable here. Option C says symbiosis. Symbiosis is a type of relationship, a close relationship, usually between two organisms where both of them have a mutual relationship. This one benefits from the other one, okay, not the parasitic one. Both of them can benefit from each other. So we say that's a symbiosis, okay, or a symbiotic relationship, which is not what is possible here. For their, don't forget, we are talking about the neck. What is about the length of their neck? How long is it? Okay. Option D, we say natural selection. Yes, natural selection has to do with a phenomenon where organisms begin to develop some part of their body, some organs in the bid to what? To survive in the particular what? Environment. This natural selection was actually brought by Charles Darwin, okay, propounded the theory, okay, that giraffes, okay, this organism begin to what? Over the years, because they need to survive, maybe they need to get food or resources, maybe they have some plants they need to feed on that at all. So with time they began to what? They began to what? Develop a longer neck region, okay, that is more than this. So the natural selection law is actually what brought about the neck of the giraffes being lengthy or being longer than it should be. So among these options now, the correct answer is option D, natural selection. Now let's move on to question number 39. The same diagram we have. In the diagram, the variation illustration is what? We have discontinuous, we have morphological, we have physiological, we have biochemical, okay? It's not discontinuous because we are talking about the long neck. What is responsible for their long neck here? It's not discontinuous, okay, and there is no biochemical because it is not having to do with chemicals, okay, that are being, that is determining this long neck that they have here. So it is not. So we have between, so A and D identity, we have between morphological and physiological. Morphological, it will be morphological if the organism's neck, okay, actually became longer. If it is physical, okay, it is a physical trait, it's a physical character, yes, then it should be morphological. If we have a physical trait or physical characteristic of the part of the organism, okay, that is what? That is present, that we can see, okay, that helps them. In this case now, the long neck now is a physical trait that helps them to do what? To get foliage food, okay, they need to get food, and also for vigilance. Maybe there's an organism that is come as a predator that wants to feed on them. They have a longer neck, and then the eye, they can see afar off, okay, than the other one. So that is actually a physical characteristic or trait. So, and that is associated with what? Morphological. So the correct answer is option B, morphological. Question number 40. So I will just explain the diagram. We have larva here. Of course, this is leaf. We have leaves here. So you want to say, do we have larva that is called leaf? Okay, this is the larva. The larva, okay, is the premature stage. Okay, we still have the growing stage of insect. Usually we have maybe butterfly, okay, that we call caterpillar. We have some other insects that we have. So this is the larva here that is stuck, okay, to this leaf, to this stem here, this branch here that we have here. So the question says the economic importance of the larva is that it does what? Usually when we talk about economic importance, okay, in science, we are talking about both the positive and the negative, okay, aspect of that particular organism. What are the parts? So don't feel economic importance is just the positive. Usually, in fact, in most cases, we refer to economic importances as the negative aspect. So don't get confused when you see maybe in the options and then we're talking about the harm, the damage that they cause. In fact, the damage that they cause in this context now, usually, yes, this is going to form feed, okay, like food for birds, for animals, for organisms that are around there, but much more than that. Option A says it's eaten by birds. Yes, it's eaten by birds, it forms food, but it is not a major economic importance, okay, as the larva. Let's look at it. Option B says develop into a moth. Okay, if the birds eat them, then it is economic importance for birds. Birds get the advantage, okay? But we are looking at, in most cases, in this context now, it is more of the negative aspect, okay, of the economic importance. We say it is eaten by birds. Option B says develop into a moth. Of course, that is not an economic importance. Option C says resembles the plant on which it lives on, like mimicry. No, that is not it. That's not an economic importance. Okay, for the plants or for the that we are looking at the damage that this is going to cause. Is it going to help this plant itself, or is it going to cause harm on this plant? Okay, option D says fits on the leaves of the crops. Of course, yes, it fits, because by the time it fits on this, it's going to cause damage on this plant. So it's an economic importance. Like I said, we've talked about economic importance. We've talked about both the negative and the positive aspect of the organism. So in this case now, it's going to feed on the leaves, okay, of the crops here, and of course it's going to cause damage on this. So feeds on the leaves of the crops is the economic importance of the larva. The correct answer is option D. Now let's move on to question number 41. We have in the diagram, the same diagram we just looked at, the type of adaptation shown in the larva is what? We have mimicry. If it would be mimicry, if the larva was actually behaving just like the leaf, okay, like trying to act out like that, but that's not happening here. Option B says counter shading. Counter shading will take place where we have maybe the part of the larva being dark, then the underneath being what? Being light. Okay, we talk about counter shading like we talk about the ones we have in fishes, okay, that live in water. So that is not what is playing out here. Option C says flash coloration. When it flashes, just like the name, okay, the color, okay, flashes, the organism sees it and then it picks, oh, this is the larva here, let me come for it. No, but this actually blends, okay, with this. The outline actually blends with it. You see it gets stuck, okay, to the leaf. So you don't look at it very well, you might not be able to see, you might not be able to decipher if there was any difference. So there is a blend, okay, color blend with the outline of this and together with this. So that we call a disruptive coloration. Disruptive coloration is actually what is experienced here. We have the butterfly, we have the caterpillars. Okay, those are some insects that actually, exhibit this disruptive coloration. So the correct answer is option D, disruptive coloration. Now let's move on to question 42. This is the diagram, the edge of an insect. We have figure 1, because that's the antenna. We have figure 2, that's the compound eye. Okay, we have the 3, and then we have actually the 4. The question says the diagram, the maxillary pulp is labeled what? Maxillary pulp is just like a small antenna, okay? Okay, that produces a small antenna like shape. Okay, usually it is used for smell and also to feed on the prey, the food which it needs to say. So we have the it's a part of the maxilla, okay, kind of that protrudes from that point, from the maxillar point. So we have it as that's why we call it the maxillary pulp that it says. So option 4 is the maxillary pulp. So we have it as B. So the correct answer is option B. Let's move on to question 43. We have the same diagram we just dealt with in the previous question. It says in the diagram, the structure labeled high is sensitive to what? Labeled high, okay, that's the antenna. So what is sensitive to? Sensitive to touch, it's sensitive to light, okay? Of course, those are the major things that are sensitive to. If you touch it, it will what? It's actually sensitive to it, and then also to light. Once there's light, can be able to detect it. So option A says light and touch, yes, correct. Option B says chemicals only, no. Option C says light only, no. Option D says chemicals and touch. If we had chemicals, okay, touch and light, okay, that would have been the answer to D, okay, but we have light present in it. So it's sensitive, the antenna is sensitive to light and is sensitive to touch. So the correct answer is option A. Now question 44. Of course, you can identify this. This is your chicken. Okay, we have the comb here, we have the beak here, we have the limb here. Okay, those are the foot, and then we have this are the tail with your name. It says in the diagram, a unique characteristic that distinguishes the class of vertebrates represented from other vertebrates is the presence of what? Don't forget, these actually belong to, we have all the animals are classified either as vertebrates and invertebrates, okay, but we are talking about vertebrates. Now the vertebrates are further classified into 5 classes. The first class, we refer to them as the class apes, okay, that's where we have the birds, the chicken, this one actually falls there, okay, the apes. Then we have the class Pisces. The class Pisces, that's where you have your tilapia fish. Okay, those fishes that you have in the water, we have them in the class Pisces. And the third class is actually the class reptiles. Okay, we have reptiles where we have some snakes, we have the lizards. Okay, those animals that have the scales that crawl with their belly. Okay, and then they have they live on land. Okay, they are reptiles. Then we have the class amphibians. The class amphibians, usually we say they are organisms that live on both land and water. Okay, those are what we refer to as the class amphibians, like your frogs, like your toads, and so on and so forth. And then we have the fifth one, which is the class mammals, where you and I actually belong to the class mammals. So all of these vertebrate classes of vertebrates, actually they have backbones. That's why we call them what? We call them vertebrates, because they have backbones, possession of backbones. But the question is trying to look at what is the difference, what differentiates this part, this class of vertebrates, of course the apes, the birds, okay, from the other vertebrates, the mammals, the reptiles, the amphibians, okay, and then the Pisces. What the option A says, 2 pairs of limbs. Yes, 2 pairs of limbs. We could have said that is correct, but we have mammals. Mammals also have 2 pairs of limbs. We have humans have 2 pairs of limbs. So because of that, that does not actually differentiate us from the mammals. Okay, option B says scales on the lower legs. Well, scales on the lower legs, we have the reptiles also having scales. We have the amphibians having scales also on them. Okay, then we have some Pisces also having scales. So that is actually not a unique category. When we say something is unique, it makes them just only to them. They are just the ones that actually add that kind of thing. Option C says a pair of wings. Yes, we have pairs of wings. Well, much more than that could be a pairs of wings. We have a pairs of wings. But do we have Pisces? Do we have any Pisces that have pairs of wings? Do we have the amphibians? Okay, we have, yes, we have some of them that have wings. Yes, in the aquatic animals, we have some of them that have wings. Okay, so it is not unique only to the apes. Okay, and then we have the last one, option D, is a covering of feathers. Okay, we have the feathers that are covered that way. I'm not sure we also have anyone that have any vertebrates that actually has the covering of feathers. So it is much more unique to what? To the birds. We have coverings on their feathers. So based on that, my submission is that the correct answer is a covering of feathers, which is option D. If you have any question bothering your mind at all on how we have done so far, please feel free to ask a question. All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to ask a question and solutions will be provided within the shortest period of time. Now let's move on to question number 45. We still have the same diagram we just finished solving. In the diagram, the structures used for offense and defense are labeled what? Of course, when you have them, of course, you have them fighting themselves. When they want to fight themselves, okay, maybe there's a predator that's actually coming up. Okay, maybe you have a snake that wants to come. You see them, you know, you see another counterpart of it. They want to fight. They use actually the beak, okay, to what? And then you see their neck. They will protrude their neck like this. You see the leg. Then the leg also, their limbs that they will also jump, you know, with it. So the defense, the organism, the structure that is used for what? Offense and defense are labeled. So they use their beak, not the comb, and then they use also their limbs here, the 2 pair of limbs here. They use that. So Roman figure 1 and Roman figure 2. So we have Roman figure 1 and 4. No, Roman figure 1 and 2. Yes, option B. So the correct answer is option B. Do you have any better explanation or better steps on how to solve some of these questions that we have solved? Please feel free to share with us. All you need to do is to go to the comment section, indicate the question number and the answer you wish to share. On to question number 46. We have a diagram here. Okay, this is a curve here. We have a number of organisms on the y-axis, and then we have the amount of rainfall on the x-axis, of course, in millimeter. Okay, so we have it ranging from 0 to 200 to 400 to 600 and so on and so forth. Then for here we have number of organisms, okay, 100, 200 and 300. So let's take them. We have about 4 different species here of organism. We have the first species, species 1. Okay, this is the curve for that. species 1. Then we have species 2. Okay, this is what? Of course, this is a straight line. Okay, horizontal. Okay, not vertical now. We have it for species 2. Species 3, we have it at this point, there's a fall here, and then at this point we have what option. So let's analyze this first of all. Now, for species 1, it means that as the number of organisms are increasing gradually, it gets to a point where the rainfall at this point is still, constant. It's still mild. It's not increased yet. It's still continuing like that. The number of organisms, so they are thriving in this point where the rainfall actually is not much. Okay, yes, because we have from here, let's say maybe it's just this 100. Okay, it's not increased. Yes, the number of organisms are increasing, but immediately for this species 1, immediately the temperature began to what? To increase. What happens? Then the number of organisms became what? Constant. You can see it moving that way, that there's no increase anymore in number of organisms. So which means that what? They are highly favored by moderate temperature. Okay, moderate rainfall. Okay, as the temperature, the rainfall is moving, is not increased yet. Okay, but it's just from 0 to 100, so that's moderate. Okay, it's not increasing progressively, and then as it kept on moving, as it got to a point here, it got to let's say around 250. What happens? The rainfall, as the rainfall increases, then they remain moderate. It continues to rise. So that means this species 1 will survive under a moderate temperature. That is what this actually means. Yes, let's look at species 2. Species 2, we have from this point, okay, as the rainfall increases, the number of organisms remain constant at 200. So which means that at 200, species 2 is found where the rain is only falling. Of course, it's not falling all over the year because rainfall is increasing. It started actually from, of course, if it's starting from here, that means actually starting from 0. Okay, of course, don't forget this is the origin from 0 point to 0. So this is 200 actually. From here to here is 200. Okay, but on the x-axis, it is actually moving from this point here. So we have it going this way, moving this way. So the rainfall is increasing, yet the number of organisms actually remains the same. Okay, then option, okay, that is for species 2. Then for species 3, let's look at the option so that we can do it side by side. Option A says species 2 is found only in locations where it rains all year round. No. Okay, where it found all year, we just analyze that. It are not only found in locations where we found them, of course, as the rainfall is increasing, we have them at 200. Before it got to 200, don't forget, we have it moving just at that point, continuously like that. So they are not only found in areas where rain fell all through the year. So option A is not actually correct. Option B says species 3 increases in number as rainfall also increases. As rainfall increases, species 3, let's look at species 3. It says it increases. Species increases in number as rainfall increases. Let's see. We have rainfall here. Okay, rainfall is increasing because we are moving from 0 point to 600. So there's an increase in rainfall. But what happens? We discover that the number of organisms here is what? Decreasing. Okay, it's decreasing. It's not increasing. If it were going this way, we would have said yes, as it's increasing. But this way now, the number of organisms is decreasing from 300. Eventually, it's going to decrease to 0. While the temperature, the rainfall is actually what? Increasing from 0 to 600. So option B says species 3 increases. No, species 3 is what? Decreasing. So this is not correct. Option C says the distribution of species 4 is not dependent on rainfall. Let's look at that. Species 4, this is species 4. Say the distribution of species 4 is not dependent on rainfall. Okay, let's look at that. This is this. Okay, as the number of organisms are increasing here, it gets to a point here. What happens? It begins to fall again. Yes, so which means that even though the temperature, there's a rise in temperature from let's say 250 or thereabout, almost 300, okay, to 400, there's still what? There's still increase in the number of what? Organisms. So even at the same rainfall, we still have it still increasing. We still have same number actually falling. So the distribution of species 4 is not dependent on rainfall. As the rainfall increases from here, what happens? It begins to fall. So which means it's actually dependent on, because if it is not dependent on rainfall, as it's moving, it should just continue moving that way. Okay, or it should have gone this way, but it kept on moving. But as the rainfall was increasing, what happened? Then it's actually, so actually rainfall is dependent. Distribution of species 4 is dependent on rainfall. Option D says species 1 thrives under conditions of moderate to high rainfall. Yes, I think we analyzed that already. You can see that as it's thriving here, what happens at this temperature as the rainfall increases, it continues to be constant. It has its optimal height here. So at moderate temperature, what happens? It can thrive more at that point. So based on our analysis, the correct answer is option D. Now we are moving on to question number 47. The same diagram we just dealt with. Okay, we have number of organisms here. We have analyzed this already. The question says in the diagram, the species whose distribution is not affected by rainfall is that one where there's constant movement, okay, so as the temperature is actually, the rainfall is increasing, the number of organisms actually remains the same way it is, because if it is affected by rainfall, the number of organisms here should actually either increase or decrease, okay. But as the rainfall is increasing, the rate at which rainfall is increasing, the number of organisms remain at 200. So we can say that the species that the distribution is not affected by rainfall is actually species 2. So we have option A is 2. So the correct answer is option A. Now let's move on to question number 48. We have a diagram here, so I'm going to explain it even if it's not that very clear. We have, of course, we have the upper surface here. We have the fungal hypha, and then we have the alga plants. We have, of course, that's chloroplast. So having chloroplast means it carries out photosynthesis. Okay, then we have the fungal hypha here at this point. So there is this type of relationship is what we call a symbiotic relationship. A relationship between fungal hypha and then we have the alga plants. Both of them benefit from each other. Okay, now don't forget that this is alga plant that has chloroplast, so which means it carries out what? Photosynthesis. As it carries out photosynthesis, the fungi will be able to what? Have access to the photosynthetic activity of the algae. Okay, when we say photosynthesis, don't forget photosynthesis, we have food is being produced, which is your sugar, which is what? Carbohydrate. So fungi gets carbohydrates from the algae, and then not just carbohydrates, oxygen, don't forget, is also the other product of photosynthesis. In other words, the examiner wishes to ask, if they had asked that what are the products of photosynthesis, you would have been able to what? Say that, okay, we have carbon dioxide, CO2 reacts with water in the presence of sunlight to give us what? Sugar, and what? Oxygen. Okay, so oxygen is given off easily. But the question is asked in this way to know if you actually know what the product of photosynthesis is actually. But that's why we have alga plant with what? The chloroplast. So it has the chloroplast and we have fungi. So this is a mutual benefit. This is a symbiotic relationship. The fungi benefit from, since the photosynthesis is taking place in the alga, so the alga plant actually carries out photosynthesis because it has chloroplast, and then the fungi actually benefits from the product, the photosynthetic activity. So by getting what? Carbohydrates, which is the sugar, which is the food that is produced, and then oxygen also present as the byproduct. On the other hand, the fungi also helps the algae by producing also water and then mineral salts to the algae. So those are the benefit, the mutual benefit that we have here. So we say in the diagram, the importance of the association to the fungus is that it obtains, option A says, a partner for reproduction. No, they are not reproducing together. They are not the same species of organism. Option B says anchorage for the algae. Anchorage for the algae. It's not an anchorage, okay? It's not an anchor. It's not serving as anchor. It's not, shading it for what? From the algae. So that is not correct. Option C says oxygen and carbohydrates from the algae. Yes, because those are the products of photosynthesis. We have carbohydrates, which is the food that is produced, and then oxygen as the byproduct. So the fungi will to benefit those two from the algae. So that those are the what? Those are the benefits. Those are the importance of the algae. That the algae, the fungi tends to benefit from the alga plant. And then option D says water and mineral salts. Is the fungi that actually supplies water and mineral salts in return to the algae plant. The algae plant has done so much, okay, has benefited what? The fungi. So the fungi has to reciprocate the benefit, okay? That's why we call it a symbiotic, a mutual relationship, and then it does that by giving. So the correct answer here is actually option C, oxygen and carbohydrates. Now question 49. The same diagram we just did. We said in the diagram, the association illustrated demonstrator. We have explained this already, okay? The fungi is benefiting from the alga plant, and the alga plant is also benefiting. Fungi gets benefits of oxygen and carbohydrates, okay, which is the food, sugar from the algae, and then the algae also in return also gets water and the mineral salts from the fungi. So it's a mutual kind of relationship. Symbiotic. So option A says parasitic. No. Commensalism. Saprophytic. Is parasitism if one of them, was benefiting while the other one was getting harmed, was being harmed, which is not the case here. Commensalism if one is benefiting and the other one is not benefiting. Should that be commensalism? Saprophytism, the fungi was feeding on a dead plant, okay, or dead wood, would have said the saprophytism. That is not what happens. Option D says mutualism. I benefit, you benefit. Both of them benefit from each other. So the correct answer is option D. Question 50. The main purpose of establishing shelter belts is the Sahel region. In the Sahel region is to what? Now, when we talk about, there are two things I want us to look at here. We talk about shelter belts, we talk about Sahel. Now, Sahel region, first of all, is a transition zone between the Sahara Desert, okay, and the Savannah. It's a transition zone. And that part is usually vulnerable to desertification, okay? You know what desertification is, okay? It's actually, vulnerable to that part. Now, we talk about shelter belt. Other name that shelter belt is called a windbreak, okay? Now, if you look at what it is now, option A says check desert encroachment. Option B says provide wood fuel. Option C says beautify the region. Option D says break the harmattan wood. Yes, usually we know that the shelter belt helps what? To break the wind. That's why we call it windbreak. It's a windbreaker. That is what it does. But in this case now, we have two options here that are more likely. We have the check desert encroachment and then break the harmattan wood. Well, you can choose to go for breaking the harmattan wood because you know that the shelter belt is what? Is actually used for what? For breaking the wind and then trying to. But don't forget, we are looking at what? A Sahel region. So I explain what the Sahel region is to us. Okay, we have the transition zone between the Sahara Desert and then we have the Savannah, okay, between them. And then that part is actually being what? It is vulnerable to desertification. So it requires helping to what? To checkmate, okay, the desert encroachment. To check the desert encroachment is what actually happens. So the major function, yes, we know that the shelter belt is used to break the harmattan wind, to break the wind, okay, to stop erosion, to stop wind and make all of this on. Yes, but in this case study now, in this matter now, in this situation now, we are talking about what? Its major function in the Sahel region. So you must put into consideration what happens in the Sahel region, okay? And usually it is what? Where we have desertification. So based on that, the main purpose of establishing shelter belts in the Sahel region is to check desert encroachment, which is option A. That is the correct answer. I believe you enjoyed this content because I really did solving those questions. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video.